Welcome to Inside the GMAT. I'm your host, Zach. I'm really excited today because we're talking about a program that I've been reading a lot about, not just in preparation for this episode, of course, but as I've been preparing to take the EA exam myself, and it is none other than the Yale MBA for Executives. I'm joined by Keith Gallinelli, Director of Admissions for the program at the Yale School of Management, and Emily Whitehouse, Associate Director of Admissions. Together, they are here to share what makes the EMBA experience unique, what they look for in applicants, and why the EA, or Executive Assessment, is such a valuable tool for candidates preparing to take this next step. So whether you're weighing your options or just starting to explore, I hope this conversation will give you the playbook for navigating the EMBA path with confidence. Keith, Emily, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Zach.
Thanks, Zach.
Could you both start by sharing a little bit about your roles at Yale and what excites you most about working with EMBA students?
Yeah, maybe I'll start. Again, my name is Keith Gallinelli. I'm the Director of Admissions. Really, me and my entire team, we're charged with bringing in a great group of people every year. We have a wonderful cohort. We have one cohort that starts every year. And I think probably the thing that excites me the most is really talking to people prior to them even getting started with an application. I mean, a lot of our students are already experienced professionals. They've achieved a level of success in their career, whether they're doctors or finance professionals who work in the insurance industry, they work for entertainment outlets or from the military. I mean, we have people coming from all different, professional backgrounds. And for all of them, they kind of get to a point in their career where they're thinking, maybe there's something more I can do. I want to learn more. I want to expand my network. I want to meet new people that are kind of like-minded and want to, push my career to that next level. And so I think probably the most exciting thing for me is really starting to talk with people and then going through that whole process, because it's really not a program for everyone. There's a lot of things that have to, kind of align in order to make this happen. And so, yeah, I mean, that's really, from my standpoint, what I like most about the program.
Yeah, and I guess I'll take it from there. Emily Whitehouse, Associate Director of Admissions, and I've been with Yale SOM across 3 programs and 8 years. And so I can say that what really struck me from the very beginning was our mission, educating leaders for business and society. It's one that really resonates with the faculty, the students, the staff, everyone who is there is kind of working under that mission and believes it and feels it. And so half of those years that I've worked with EMBA, specifically in kind of a recruiting and outreach capacity and as one of our admissions officers. And I can say, similar to Keith, I've had the privilege of having so many amazing conversations with people over the years and being able to look back on those conversations and watching that person cross the stage at commencement and having that moment of like, wow, I really talked to them. I knew them when, or I talked to them back when they were just kind of thinking about this and maybe they were even doubting themselves or were unsure of if it was their right time or if they were right for the program. And being that little bug in their ear or angel on their shoulder saying, hey, I think you can do this and I think this is good for you. And giving them that opportunity. So from the recruiting side, I put on that recruiting hat. And then I'd say the other part is the admissions officer piece, getting to evaluate candidates, getting to create a class that's really unique and special. And then my other function within our office is I'm one of the leads of the Student Ambassador Program. So I have a great opportunity of maintaining that relationship over the 2 years they're with us, where they serve as incredible ambassadors of the program. And as they grow in their community orientedness, I really enjoy just watching them grow and develop and watching them fly off into amazing futures as an alum, where they still stay very in touch with us. I'm very grateful for it, and I'm very proud of the work that we get to do.
I'm not surprised, but it's so great to hear how involved both of you are with the student experience. It's more than just reviewing applications, of course. It's being a part of their journey. Keith, for folks who are listening and hearing about Yale's MBA for Executives program for the first time on this podcast, how would you describe it at a very high level?
So again, when you're thinking about this, when you think about most graduate programs, Usually they get more and more narrow as you continue along the path. So for example, if you're doing a master's degree in biochemistry, then you're going to get a little bit more narrow. You're not doing biology, you're not doing chemistry. You do a PhD, you're getting even more and more narrow, studying a very individual point within that field. With an MBA program, it's a little bit more broad. And so it usually is, our program in particular is a program that's set up to give people from lots of different industries all of the business experience that they would need. And it's a challenge for our professors because, you might have people that have a business background. They've taken finance and economics classes in the past. We've had other people that have not. So you have to balance a little bit about how do you build a rigorous program that's going to be, it's going to be challenging for people. It's going to give them everything they need, but also be able to level set so that everyone can kind of go through it together. And so in our program, basically, it starts off in the first year where everyone goes through the same core classes together. They're all in one classroom, really, and they take classes that are unique to Yale SOM. It's something that was developed along with our residence program, our full-time program, and we use it in the EMBA program as well. So instead of taking classes like finance or marketing or accounting, they take classes that are organized around a stakeholder perspective. So how an executive would see something. For example, you'll take a class called the customer or the competitor or sourcing and managing funds, the innovator. And so it's a little bit different of a twist. You'll still get a lot of, you'll get all of those functional areas like the accounting and the marketing, but you're doing it through the lens of how an executive would look at it. And then in the second year, people have an opportunity to either take a deep dive into one of our areas where we specialize in, or they can take more of a general management approach to hit on topics that they really think are going to be beneficial to their career. And so it's a really great program because it is more broad. And of course, throughout the whole thing, leadership is built into it. Because I think for many people, especially people that are in a technical role, but you may find yourself, let's say an engineer, they're working on projects, they're doing things where they're actually making a product. As they advance in their career, maybe they start doing less of that and they start being the leader of a team, and they have had no leadership or management experience or classwork to help them deal with some of these things. And so a lot of people realize they've identified gaps and they want to address those gaps because they want to keep growing in their career.
Emily, what do you see as some of the biggest differences between students who choose the EMBA program versus that traditional full-time MBA?
Absolutely. And this actually speaks to my history with Yale. I started with the full-time team, which of course is an incredible value proposition if it's the right fit for you. But there are some differentiating factors here, I think, that are important to note. On average, those folks tend to have 5 years or less of full-time work experience. There are some special cases in which someone is in a position where they want to leave their full-time employment to focus intensively and live in New Haven for that 22-month period. And if that's for you, then it's a great opportunity. But that's really more often than not, it's for someone who's looking for a bit of a sharper pivot, and they're definitely in a position of walking away from their role, maybe with a plan of going back to that role in a bigger, better capacity, or totally changing it up and spending the summer between years 1 and 2 in a position where they're interning maybe for their next big role or recruiting throughout the program for their next big role. Whereas our EMBA students have at least 7 years of full-time work experience by the time they're ready to start the program. But on average, they have closer to 16 years of full-time work experience and are about 36 years of age. But the years of experience, the years of age are less important than what's going on in those years. And typically it's a demonstrated positive career trajectory, a clear leadership path. Like they're just kind of starting to scratch the surface of leadership. As Keith said before, maybe going from that individual contributor role to something a little bit more of a leadership position. And also the intention to work full time while in pursuit of this. That's the expectation of our applicants, that we have of our applicants and our candidates, that they're working full time throughout this program and they're applying what they're doing in real time as well to their work.
You're giving a couple hints to this question. What kind of value does the EMBA bring to someone who is already established in their career, who does have those, possibly 16 years of
Yep.
experience?
Absolutely. So, in my view, having seen both programs and seeing the candidates therein, for me, I see this as all of the benefit of a full-time, robust MBA, but it's delivered in an executive-friendly format. You're either already an executive or you're eyeing the C-suite and you're thinking about it. And for someone who is really looking to really, in the class weekend, Friday and Saturday, every other weekend, you're on Yale's campus at Evans Hall, and you are immersing yourself in what we consider to be a very rich academic environment with thoughtful and engaging peers in your cohort. And you're taking those learnings and you're able to apply them on Monday to real challenges that are facing your organization. Maybe things that you've been racking your brains about for months, years, but you now have a fresh lens and a fresh perspective, maybe through those organizational perspectives or through something that a peer of yours said during a class, someone that you otherwise would have never met had it not been for this program. So for me, that is the EMBA value for someone who's a little bit more mid-career and is kind of looking at the rest of their career and wanting to make the biggest and best impact in those remaining years.
Keith, how do the life stages and priorities of EMBA candidates, who are mid-career, balancing their careers, families, maybe a role that they play in the community, how does that shape the way that you evaluate applications?
I think that it's really important for the candidate themselves. They need to evaluate it as well, because I think when you're looking at people that are in their 30s and 40s and 50s and, sometimes 60s and 70s, even in our program, their life exists. You're not a student where you can really devote full time, all of your time and effort into pursuing an academic program. You still have a lot of things that you're going to have to juggle. At work, you're going to have people that you report to. You're going to have people that report to you. If you own your own company, you have to make sure that your company is still going to be thriving when you're not physically there. Then, of course, for people that are mid-career, they're also midlife usually. So you do have these considerations. You may have young kids, you may have kids on the way, you may have, you know, kids that are starting to grow, maybe elderly parents. Sometimes it's just a pet. You really, you're trying to think about, okay, now I'm going to have to balance my professional. I'm going to have to balance my personal. And now I'm going to add a full-time academic program on top of this, as well as for many of our students, they also have to think about travel because it is an on-campus program. We do have people that travel across the country and sometimes other countries as well. They're flying in from California and Calgary and Texas and Florida and coming to New Haven every other weekend for 22 months. That's a lot to manage. And I think that if people, rarely do we see somebody that wakes up on like Monday and says, I'm going to do an EMBA and they start applying on Tuesday. It does happen, but for the great majority of people, this is something that's been in their mind for a long time. And so getting back to your question about how do we evaluate the applications, we really want to know, have you been thoughtful in thinking about how you're going to make all this work? It's not the kind of thing that you can just jump into. One of the things we actually do require as part of our application is that you do have to have your employer sign off on the fact that you're going to be pursuing a program like this. And it's not so much for maybe like financial sponsorship, but it's more for that time out of the office. We estimate it's over 60 days out of the office over those 22 months that you're physically not going to be there. And so how are you going to manage that? How is your team going to manage you not being there? Can they make decisions when you're not around? What about if there's a major client, crisis going on or something like that? People can't step away, definitely, but you also have to be very thoughtful about it because if not, you're not going to be successful and it's going to be very hard. And I think as an admissions professional, I've done it at multiple levels in many different places. It's not just about getting in. It's about ensuring that they're going to get out and be successful because we never want to see somebody start something and just realize they can't finish it. And we're very lucky. Most of the students that do start, they will finish. And it's on us as admissions professionals to make sure that, we've tried to align all these things.
How do you put together that thoughtful, serious application?
Yeah, I'm happy to take the lead on this one, Zach.
Sure, go for it.
And ideally, yes, a candidate is giving this whole decision to apply the time and thoughtful reflection that it deserves. And I certainly maintain that going to business school is a worthwhile investment that is not to be entered into lightly, but is very worth your time and reflection. And so with that in mind, still, I do maintain that our process is very thoughtful, streamlined. We are not trying to make you jump through too many fiery hoops, and knowing that you are a busy person with a lot of competing priorities. And so Keith acknowledged one of the biggest lifts of this process, which is the employer approval piece, and that's 4 times sponsorship. Sometimes the financial sponsorship conversation can come up organically from there, and if that works out, good for you. That's wonderful. But it is something that sometimes takes a few meetings and a little bit of extra time to kind of map it all out and determine how it can all work. We keep a copy of the academic calendar on our website. We will have the one for the class of 2028 up pretty soon, I believe. And it lays out pretty neatly the 22 months in this program and blocks off when you're expected to be on campus, those compulsory periods of time in which you've got residency or global week where you must attend, and then those periods during class weekends when the expectation, it's a full-time program, so you have to expect that you'll be there. But there is a little bit of flexibility built in for those class weekends when life just gets the better of you. Maybe you have a planned required trip for work, and you can let the program team, your academic affairs and student life lifeline during the 22 months know about that. But yeah, setting yourself up for success and preparing this application, I think, is certainly worth the time and effort. The other big lift is the standardized test component, and making sure that you're taking the time there. Another piece is crafting thoughtful, but in our view, reasonably brief essays. We've got some interesting prompts that I'll get into, I think, later in our conversation. Acquiring transcripts, polishing up the resume, like these are all kind of standard things that we're asking for. But we just ask that because it's so streamlined that you really give thought and time and attention to pulling it all together, because a real live person, people are going to be reviewing this application record and doing it in a thoughtful way. So we hope knowing that we are thoughtfully reviewing on our end means that you will thoughtfully put it together.
Yeah. And when you're reviewing those applications, what qualities or experiences stand out the most, or what are your eagle eyes sort of looking for?
Every component of the application, it's kind of like layers, right? And each piece is giving us a more complete portrait of a candidate. So don't be afraid to be your best self. You don't have to lay it all on the line for us necessarily, but maybe do you mentor others? Do you volunteer for an organization outside of your career or other priorities that you're really passionate about? You also don't have to make up fun or silly things that you do to make yourself stand out and be some unique character to us. That's not necessary in order to win us over in some way. We're looking for authenticity here. But just about everyone has their something that they're passionate about, something that sets them apart. So just don't be afraid to share that about yourself.
And maybe I'll add something to that as well too. Our team is very, very accessible, and we encourage people as they're going through this process to reach out, because we will have very candid conversations with people. We understand that this is a really big decision for many people, and again, from the admissions office, we're not trying to trick people. We're really trying to make you successful. So as you start thinking about putting an application together, I mean, things that we're looking for, some of them are kind of what you've been doing. Like, we really want to see your progression through your career. Have you been taking on more and more leadership or managerial responsibilities? Have you been running larger projects, taking on more responsibilities? Have you been kind of looking for that next thing? Then the other part of it too is, what are you hoping to get out of this? Like, how are you really hoping to use this degree? If you're thinking it's going to be a magic formula that's going to automatically get you to the next step, that's probably not the case. You need to be thoughtful about it. You need to think about, what do I want to get out of this? Where do I want to go next with my career? And I think that's something that people sometimes forget. It's not really what we want to hear. It's what's important to you, because again, this is a very, very big investment financially, of time, of effort, of just, blood, sweat, and tears, for lack of a better word. And like I said, it is the full Yale MBA experience. It's not MBA light. It's not watered down. It's quite quantitative. It's a pretty rigorous program, and we want to make sure that people are going to be prepared for it. They know why they're coming, and they know where they're going.
So obviously it seems like being inauthentic in some way, shape, or regard is a pretty common pitfall that somebody could fall into when they're applying to Yale or any other program, what are some other common pitfalls, if you don't mind sharing, and how can applicants make sure that they don't fall into them?
For me, I think the most important thing to hammer home here is that the simple things are the big things in pulling together an application. Spelling, grammar, those are very important things. And surprisingly, they are missed even by some of the most storied and illustrious professionals. They just are kind of, maybe it's a sloppily put together portfolio. And I would also say you should hedge on over explanation versus under explanation. Sometimes we have folks that are maybe financial professionals or healthcare professionals, and they're using a lot of acronyms that for them are very common. But for a layperson, someone such as myself, an admissions officer, I don't necessarily know what that means, and I have to Google it. That's just taking away time from me really thoughtfully reviewing your application to figure out which acronym you're referring to here. So for me, that's valuable. And then also in the over versus under explanation category, explaining gaps in your work experience or challenges that you had academically, hiding those things from the admissions officers is just not in your best interest. It leaves us kind of wondering. And you don't want us to be in that position of wondering, because that's when little stories get made up and they might not work to your benefit. So you're better off just laying it out there and letting us know where you were at. We're looking at the you of now. We know academically for a lot of our folks, being that it's an EMBA program, it's been maybe 15, 20 years since they've been in a classroom. So that is one of our data points that we're reviewing, but it's not the be all and end all. So don't let that scare you into being too quiet on that front. So those are some of the ones that I see personally.
On the topic of data points, Emily, I think you mentioned earlier test scores, and of course, this is inside the GMAT. So I would be remiss not to talk about a standardized exam. Many EMBA programs don't require a test as part of the admissions requirement, but Yale does. Why do you take that different approach?
I'll be honest with you. Yeah, many schools are not requiring it. It really is. It is sometimes a barrier. People are afraid. They're afraid to get right back into taking an exam when they haven't done it. Again, as Emily mentioned, you may have not been in a classroom in 20 plus years. Personally, I actually took the EA exam myself. I asked my team to do that as well. I know, Zach, before we started this today, you even worked for GMAC and you're going to be taking it for the first time yourself. But, I was a little bit overwhelmed myself. I realized that there were things that I had studied, especially on the math side, quantitatively, that I just had not seen or used in honestly 3 decades. And it took some time for me to get back into an academic study mode. And I think that's one of the reasons that we do require it. Yes, it is a hurdle. It does take some time to prepare, but it's a metric that we use to assess somebody's readiness to get back into an academic program. And again, a quantitative academic program. Also, I think for the candidates themselves, this gives them a little bit of an opportunity to do a litmus test on themselves. Like if you're struggling to carve out a few hours a day over, let's say 2 weeks or so to get ready for this test, I can guarantee you're going to struggle with the program, because that's about the same amount of time that you're going to need to put in to prepare for your class weekends. And so if you can't get that time off your calendar, if you have to take the kids to a soccer game, or you have work meetings, or you have to travel to Japan and you're just like, I can't do this, I can't get ready for this test, you're going to want to think a little bit about, am I going to be able to do this program? Because that's what's going to be required. And so that's one of the reasons that we do require it. And I think, really that is, I hear from a lot of people, they really dreaded going into this, but when they took it, they're like, you know what? I identified some things that I need to work on. I also feel a little bit more confident because I got through it and I got a score that I'm happy with. And they were just not unsure of themselves, because again, there's not a lot of times when you're in your 40s and 50s, for example, where you have to take a test. It doesn't come up all that often anymore. So I think that's one of the main reasons that we use it.
Yeah, I want to dig a little bit deeper into that, because this is a topic I'm actually really interested in, mostly because I had the experience of having taken an exam to get into business school. When we first met, Keith, you mentioned 3 specific things that taking a test can demonstrate about a candidate's readiness, and I identified with all 3 of those. Do you remember what they are?
One is to try to like ease back into the study mode. Like I said, it's hard sometimes to just to get yourself set up and like, you probably all remember from being in high school or in college, you're going to pull an all-nighter, you're going to do, your study for your tests or whatever. If you haven't done that in a long time, it takes a little bit of work. The second is time management. Like it really does take the ability to carve out that time to get ready. I've heard from some students where they said, you know what, I'm going to block off every day at lunch for 2 hours. So 1 hour of whatever is my lunchtime. The next hour is going to be me studying. And I'm that way nobody can put meetings on my calendar. And that's when I'm going to study. Also because I'm maybe at the office and I don't have people at home bothering me. So it allows them to do that. And then I would say the third part really is identifying those skill gaps. And so for me personally, I found that I was having a hard, like I forgot some of the rules for like manipulating fractions. And it's almost high school math, but when you don't use it every day and you're trying to take a timed test, you want to be able to recall that right away. And so we find that sometimes even people after they take the test, they say, okay, here's some of the things that I need to brush up on. And there are courses out there that you can do online that will focus on those different courses. And I think that a lot of people appreciate that because they want to make sure they're being well set up to get back into business school. Now, that said, we also have a really good program team that works with our student as they transition from the admission side to being an enrolled student. And we have lots of pre-work that they have to do prior to starting the program. It's things on mathematics. We have professors that help teach them some of the core concepts that they're going to need because we do have people like yourself that were theater majors, that were, art majors. And so we want to make sure that everybody's going to be set up. So we even have a pre-programmed math course. We have an Excel course where, some people are wizards at spreadsheets. Others don't know the difference between a spreadsheet and a table. And it's like, okay, well, I need to know how to do all this stuff. So yeah, I think those are the things, easing back into the study mode, time management and skill gaps.
Those that have taken the exam, we have a better sense of where they are in terms of their preparedness for this program. So from our standpoint, that gave me additional support against those naysayers that might say, oh, I'm not going to apply for a program that requires an exam. And I think that 9 times out of 10, people that take it find it wasn't as bad as they thought and that it's pretty doable. And I think that GMAC does a really nice job of putting together calendars so that you can organize your time and prep materials so that you can really feel comfortable and confident as you're going through the process of preparing yourself for this. We also are very open to counseling folks who are applying to our program. They can come to us and say, well, this was my score. Do you think I need a retake? Do you think that this is good enough? And oftentimes it's more of a you versus you sort of a question, right? Do you think it was your best take? Do you think you could have done better? Is there value in you retaking it? Do you feel like the other elements of your application boost you enough that you maybe don't need the retake? We as a school say 150 or better and a 10 or better on each of those 3 subsections. So if you're there, and that's great. And I don't think it requires any sort of a retake. But if you are just wanting to smash it and do the best you possibly can, more power to you. But I do think that most are pleasantly surprised once they start to prepare how much it's doable in a relatively short period of time versus other test types. And also that feeling of pride that Keith mentioned, that you then can say you did this, which is really cool.
And I think also to that point, you will identify gaps yourself that, even if you are going to do a retake, there are resources out there that can help you get up to speed in certain areas that you're going to need in the program. So like whether it's a course like MBA math or something like that, where you're able to start, honing in on those certain areas that maybe you've never even had in a classroom. So when you do that retake, you have done something to improve your scores because you've actually learned something. You've identified those areas that you just don't have the background with or need a refresher on. And then when you do that retake, you can be proud of the fact that you did well because you addressed areas where you needed help. And there's no problem asking for help. I mean, our students will be asking for help too when they get into certain classes, and we have a lot of resources that help support them along the way. Teaching assistants and professors and office hours, and even your classmates and your colleagues. We see this all the time when you have people are experts in their areas and they're willing to help support their classmates. And I think that, that's another thing we kind of mentioned before, some of the difference between the executive MBA and the full-time MBA program. Our students, they are competitive and they want to do well, but they also want to help each other out, because many times at the end of the day, even if they are looking for other jobs and new jobs, they're usually not going to be in direct competition with one another because they're in vastly different industries. And so people are really willing to give of themselves and their time to ensure that their classmates are going to succeed as well.
So for all these listeners who are thinking about pursuing an EMBA, what should they be doing right now? What is the single most important step they can take?
Of course, you're going to want to research programs that are out there. There's a lot of wonderful programs. There really are. Maybe it's a geographic thing, or maybe it's a cost thing, or whatever it may be. But I think probably the most important step is start gathering your thoughts and start communicating and talking with the stakeholders in your life. And this is your professional stakeholders. So, people that you're working with and working for, clients that you serve. And then I cannot stress enough how important it is to get support in your personal life. Like, if you are, let's say, married and you're just going to drop this on your spouse, be like, oh, by the way, guess what I'm doing? That's a really bad idea. So like starting to have those conversations, and, sometimes interesting things come from that. Sometimes I've heard from people, they started talking to their boss about it and their boss said, you know what? I did my executive MBA. I think this is great. And it just like starts sparking excitement and things that, within your professional life. And you find that there's support that you didn't think was going to be there. And sometimes, again, that happens on the personal side as well, where people are like, yeah, this is great. I think it's, I'm here to support you. I'm going to be, I'll back you up, because we understand this is going to be a big lift. But if you start having those conversations, even before you reach out to the first person from any school, that will give you a big leg up. It really will.
And to reiterate, things we've said before too, a lot of conversations that I have with people, some very accomplished and successful people, are their own worst critics. And the whole kind of saying no to yourself, like stopping before you even start, I feel like I hear that a lot. People have a lot of individual personal objections, the old imposter syndrome bit. Don't stand in your own way. Don't say no to yourself. I've even been known to say, shoot your shot, because at the end of the day, putting yourself out there, saying yes to yourself and giving yourself this chance, it's going to open a door. It's going to give you the opportunity just to kind of see how it all lays out. And there's a good possibility that when you put yourself out there, you take some time to be thoughtful and vulnerable and pull together this application and put yourself out there. Good things can come from that. Ideally, the time is your time and you can form an incredible next step for yourself in embarking on this and finding peers that become business partners, friends for life. I mean, I think that there's an incredible value proposition here to be had, but you have to be the one to hit submit. You have to be the one that is going for this. And as we've said more than once during this time together, we give you so many great opportunities to feel it out and to learn if it's for you. And yeah, I'm just a big proponent of self-improvement and advancement and growth in whatever shape that takes for you. And the others in your life will feel it too. It has a habit of having a ripple effect. I've heard from many of our alums that it's a glow up, it's a transformation, it's an amazing transformative experience if you allow yourself to have it. And I would say that those are the big pieces.
Honey, we're going to New Haven.
Yeah. People do that. And sometimes, again, I've heard that, while person A is visiting us, B and the kids are going and doing like the undergrad tours of Yale, or you're going to get some pizza, or, even if they're flying in from farther away, they come into New York and do some Broadway shows and go to a game of some sort. Like, really understanding what that whole trip is going to be like, seeing the campus, seeing the location is really, really beneficial. And I think not just for the candidate themselves, but sometimes from their support network as well.
Yeah, it's a family affair in a lot of cases.
So how can listeners go to learn more about Yale's MBA for Executive program or any business program at Yale so they can shoot their shot?
There's lots of ways to engage with us particularly. I mean, our website is a great place to start. There's the whole portfolio of programming from full-time, specialized one-year degree programs, all the way up through executive education courses and programming, either individual programming or business or, kind of company programming is available there. But to learn more about EMBA specifically, I recommend going ahead and submitting a pre-assessment on our website. That'll give us a chance to have a look at your LinkedIn profile or your resume. And quite literally, one of us will get back to you on that and give you some idea of next steps that we think might be useful for you. So that's one way. Keith, anything else there?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a really good thing. That one thing people ask us is like, are there actual humans reading the pre-assessments? And I guarantee you, yes, there are. Myself and everybody on my team, we all do them. But we offer a variety of ways to connect. We often travel out to various different cities, so we can meet people one to one. We schedule calls with people, we do virtual chats, and then we have a lot of really good information sessions throughout the fall and the spring. So you can come to campus and see the program in action. And we always host them on class weekends. So you get the chance to meet the admissions team. You can have chats with our current students and ask them questions about how they made this decision or what the travel is like, and then go to a live class and then and sit in and see what it would look like if you were to join. Because I think that again, doing as much research as you possibly can is going to be very valuable. And I think it's really true. As you look at the schools and Yale in particular, you may find that this exactly meets what you're looking for. Some people find out maybe it's not exactly, and that can help you a lot in this whole process, because then you can really kind of take that deep dive when you find out this is the one that I want to do and this is what I want to pursue. And we're always here to help out, and that's what we're hoping to do. And this was a lot of fun to sit down and talk kind of candidly about both the program and getting prepared for it.
Well, thank you so much, Keith and Emily, for joining us on the podcast. If you're listening and you're a professional considering your next step, remember the most important move is simply to start. Whether that's exploring programs, connecting with admissions offices, or taking the executive assessment to showcase your readiness. I mean, I'm ready to do a school visit right now. You guys ready?
You're more than
Ready?
welcome.
Come on
Cool.
down.
More than welcome.
To learn more about Yale's MBA for Executive program, head to som.yale.edu. And for more resources to guide your business school journey, you can visit mba.com. And lastly, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to Inside the GMAT on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen or watch podcasts, so you don't miss future discussions with a school or program that might or might not be on your radar. Inside the GMAT is brought to you by GMAC. I'm GMAC Zach. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.